Okay, welcome in, one and all. Now going to be reviewing all of the wild card action from the NFL, and what a weekend it truly was. I'll go over the teams that I thought would win, who actually won, and the scores from each game. Starting with probably the biggest upset I think we've had in recent history, as the Green Bay Packers took on the Dallas Cowboys. I think everybody and their parents and grandparents would have guessed the Cowboys would have been able to easily advance to the second round of the postseason, or the divisional round of the postseason, but it was not meant to be. They got blown out in their own stadium. 48-32 would be the final score. And yeah, you might think 16 points isn't really a blowout, but I mean, with only 6 minutes remaining in the game, it was 48-16. Dallas got like two late garbage touchdowns, in my opinion, which meant absolutely nothing. Maybe it was just for pride, whatever the case may be is. But holy cow, did Jordan Love look like Aaron Rodgers-esque, if my honest opinion. And now the Green Bay Packers are advancing to the divisional matchup. The Cowboys got sent home, and there's going to be a lot of questions going into this offseason. Are there going to be coaching changes? Are there going to be personnel changes? Is Jerry Jones finally going to step down? Probably not. He's a billionaire. Why the hell would he move away? But I mean, or step down from his position. But like for the Cowboys, this has to be the biggest devastating loss in recent postseason history. And I just read a stat that this was their third straight 12-5 season. And obviously, they got to the divisional round last year after defeating the Buccaneers. They lost to the 49ers. The year before that, they lost at home to the 49ers in the wild card round. So they haven't been to a championship game since like 1995 or 1996. It's been almost 30 years, which is absurd to think that this team has not been able to advance to the uh, big dance, let alone a championship game in almost 3 decades. So, for the Green Bay Packers, congratulations, you're moving on. You will be taking on the 49ers, and I will be doing my previews in my next video for football. All right, so on to the next matchup, which takes place in Detroit. And this was very intriguing, and I will get to why this was a very interesting matchup in just a second. So the Los Angeles Rams were the number 6 seed, and they went into Detroit, who were the number 3 seed of the NFC. I did predict that the Rams would be able to get this matchup only because they had the more veteran quarterback, but unfortunately, it was not meant to be. It was a very close contest. 24-23 would be the final score. The Lions securing their first playoff win since 1992. So it's been well over 30 years since they've been able to have a playoff victory, a playoff success. So it's been a long time coming, to say the least. Now, the reason I say this one was quite intriguing was because obviously you had the two quarterbacks traded for one another back in the 2021 offseason. It paid off immediately for the Rams as Matt Stafford led the Rams to their Super Bowl victory over the Cincinnati Bengals. And now it's looking like the trade's now paying off more for Jared Goff, as he was able to defeat his former team in a playoffs position. And like I just finished saying, help the Lions get their first playoff victory in well over 3 decades. So long time coming, to say the least, if you're a Lions fan. So they advanced to the divisional round for the first time, like I said, in over 30 years. And I will get to their opponent in just a second. All right, the next matchup takes place in Tampa Bay. We have the number 3 seed in the Buccaneers, and they played host to the Philadelphia Eagles. So I will just load up the teams on the screen as we speak. So coming into this matchup, I did predict that Tampa would get the victory only because the Eagles, after starting off 10-1, they went 1-6 down the stretch, which is absolutely absurd because this team just made the Super Bowl a season ago. They looked like they were going to be serious contenders well over halfway through this season, and then the wheels just came completely off the rails, and this team looked like an absolute shell of himself in the last 7 weeks of the regular season. And for the Buccaneers, again, that they looked really well at times during the regular season, then they looked very poor as well. And I'll never forget like their last game against the Panthers. They couldn't even score a touchdown, and they needed that in order to secure not only home field advantage in the playoffs, but a division crown as well. But you wouldn't have guessed that coming into this game, as they just blew the socks off the Eagles, 32-9 would be the final score in this matchup. So the Buccaneers will be advancing in the postseason, and they will be heading into Detroit to take on the Lions, which should be a very interesting matchup as you're going to have Baker Mayfield taking on Jared Goff in a divisional matchup that I don't think anyone would have predicted. And as for the Eagles, like I said, a very tough season and a very tough way to go out in a postseason when you get blown out. It's one thing if you lose by a touchdown or just under a couple of points, but to lose by 23 points is pretty heartbreaking. And yeah, so for the Eagles, their season is officially done. And the big news coming out of Philadelphia is the retirement announcement of Jason Kelce, the longtime center from that team. So they're going to have a lot of questions going into the offseason, whether they have to go into the draft and try to get somebody or trade, whatever the case may be. There's going to be a lot of changes, I guarantee, when it comes to this team and what they're going to look like come next fall. All right, off to the AFC side of things, where we have the Buffalo Bills, and they played host to the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right. So I did predict that Buffalo would get the victory, and they did. They won by 14 points. 31-17 would be the final score in this one. So the Bills will be advancing to the divisional matchup, which isn't a shock to anyone. It's just going to be a matter of can they get over that hump and get back to a championship game. And I'll get to their opponents in just a quick little second. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is obviously a heartbreaking loss. You fought so hard all season to get into the postseason. You made it, and then you got bounced in the first round of the playoffs. And I remember watching that press conference from Mike Tomlin after the game, and he stormed out in the middle of a reporter asking him a question. So clearly he was very frustrated with the outcome of the game and the team play. So I don't know. I mean, it's one thing for a player to storm out on the media, aka Cam Newton after Super Bowl 50, but for a coach to do that, it doesn't look too good for his repertoire. And I mean, this guy's been pretty level-headed and pretty cool. So for him to do something like this is a little out of the ordinary. And then after that, he announced that he still wants to come back as their coach for next season. And it's just like, man, you can't be storming out in the middle of in the media, especially in the postseason. So I mean, it's a lot of question marks. So let's put it that way. But I mean, I'm sure he's probably bitter, like I said, about being bounced in the first round of the postseason. The last time the Steelers had any success in the postseason was back in the 2016-17 campaign when they made it all the way to the championship game, but unfortunately they lost to Tom Brady and the Patriots. Ever since then, they've made the postseason, but they haven't been able to get a single victory since that particular year. All right, off to Kansas City, where we have the Chiefs, and they're playing host to the Miami Dolphins. All right. So the Dolphins entered this game as the number 6 seed. The Chiefs got the number 3 seed. I did predict that Kansas City would win, and they sure did. They won by 19 points. 26-7 would be the final score. A very cold game. I believe it was the 4th coldest game in NFL postseason history. So if you're a fan outside, it probably wasn't that enjoyable. I'm sure you're excited and happy that your team won, but you're probably cold as F, to say the least. So with the victory, the Chiefs will be advancing to the divisional round. Big surprise, as this team has just been so dominant over the last 4 or 5 seasons. It's hard to not see them make the playoffs, let alone get bounced early. So we'll be seeing more Chiefs football next week as they take on the Bills. And for a very fun fact, this is going to be the first time in the Patrick Mahomes era that they've been playing a away game in the playoffs. As for the Dolphins, a very tough end of the season, as it looked like they were going to be the favorites heading into almost the last week of the regular season. Looked like they could have, if they had beaten the Bills, they would have had the home field advantage, and they would have ended up getting the number 2 seed. But unfortunately, it was not meant to be. So their season has come to an end as they made it, but they got bounced in a wild card spot. All right, the last match took place in Houston, where we had the Texans, and they played host to the Cleveland Browns. So for me, if you were a betting person and if you bet on Houston, you probably would have came out big. Not trying to disrespect the Texans, as they are a very good young team, but when you look on paper, you had the veteran Joe Flacco joining the Browns, and he ultimately led them to a playoff position, taking on a CJ Stroud and the Texans, who are obviously a younger team that, uh, how do I put this? They did a lot better than what myself included, and I feel like any analysis would have guessed. As normally, when you have a rookie quarterback and you're kind of like in the middle of a rebuild, wouldn't expect you to have as much success in your first season as he did. But the Texans proved everybody wrong, including myself, and they not only made the postseason, they not only won the division, they won a wild card spot in CJ Stroud's first playoff game. So a lot of accomplishments for this Houston Texans squad. And it wasn't like it was a close game. It was 45-14. They absolutely destroyed the Browns, who I predicted would win this game. So if you're Cleveland, this has to be absolutely gut wrenching to not only lose, but to find out your former quarterback succeeded with another team and he's moving on and you guys got sent packing. So I'm sure it's very, very tough, to say the least, to be a Browns fan. So with the victory, the Texans will be advancing to the divisional matchup. They will be taking on the Baltimore Ravens. All right, that takes care of my recap from this wild card wild card round. As I said, I will have a preview for the divisional matchup here, and that should be my next video that I upload. As always, if you're new to this channel and you like this type of content, please feel free to hit the sub button. I'd be very grateful, and I'd be appreciative as well. And until next time, take care.